Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for your patience with us getting started. We are really excited to be doing this Words, Weavings, and Songs Q&A today. We'll be getting started in a couple of minutes. So just hang tight. We'll be getting started in about a minute. And we'll be going live. Thank you so much. Just give folks a moment to join. Hello, everyone. Thanks again. I hope that folks are finding this new live stream. It looks like people are finding their way over. Thank you so much for your patience with finding this new one. So we're going to get started now. My name is Joy Yamaguchi. I am the Public Programs Coordinator here at the Japanese American National Museum. And on behalf of JANM, I want to thank you so much for joining us today. Though our museum doors are closed to the public, we are able to open our virtual doors to you all and have you all join us online. So that's part of our JANM from Home initiative, and that includes online programs like this, workshops like our interactive cooking workshop we have tomorrow, and even virtual school visits, which is a new initiative that we just started. And you can find all of that on our website at janm.org. And if you like this program and you appreciate the work that we're doing, we would love to both hear your feedback and let us know what we're doing well and what we can improve on, as well as get your support. And that can be through a one-time donation or through membership, which we can have Alyctra talk about a little bit more later in this program. But membership is a really great way to stay connected to the museum and help support our mission and our work. This program is part of the JANM Digital Film Festival, which highlights works that's produced by our Emmy Award-winning Frank H. Watase Media Arts Center. And that's through these virtual screenings and Q&A sessions with those involved with the films. And if you like this film and you want to go a little more digital analog, you can go to the museum store and purchase the DVD, which includes an extra track called Momo's Excellent Adventure by Dan Kwong. And now, without further ado, I want to finally introduce all of our panelists. So first, we have Alyctra Matsushita. She graduated from UC Santa Barbara with a BA in English and Asian American Studies and was part of the Getty Merrill undergraduate internship program, serving as an intern in the Media Arts Department in 2011. She returned to the museum in 2014 and currently serves as the Membership and Individual Giving Manager at JANM. She's also the granddaughter of Wakako Yamauchi. And then we also have Hana van der Steur, who has served as the administrative director at the Museum of Jurassic Technology for the past 9 years. As an avid home cook and baker, she is also assistant director and dean of hydration at the Institute of Domestic Technology, a cooking school and food crafting think tank with a focus on food preservation methods and techniques for the modern age. As Momo Nagano's only grandchild, she endeavors every day to live up to her grandmother's ideals, or at the very least, not embarrass her family, which I think we can all relate to. And then finally, we have Erin Nomura Marquez, who is the eldest of 13 grandchildren on her grandmother's Mary Nomura's side. As a multi-potentialite, she manages a variety of projects and creative endeavors, including supporting students in the visual arts as the project director for work-based learning and media arts on Orange Coast College. She also does fine art painting and photography and has a jewelry design business that she's run for over 20 years. Together with her husband, she has held a spiritual wellness company, Sacred Harmony, which includes wellness coaching, mindfulness workshops, spiritual awakening talks, and seminars. Plus, she just started playing the ukulele. So we have a really exciting group of folks. And then later, a little bit later on in the program, we'll be joined by Mary Nomura herself, who we're so excited to have on the program. So thank you so much to you all for joining. And I just kind of want to start with your reflections on this film. It came out in 2002, which is 18 years ago, which is incredible to think about. But would love to kind of know what it felt like to watch this film again 18 years later and what thoughts it was sparking for you, what it was bringing up. Whoever wants to take this can go first.
I'll jump in. Yeah, I mean, a lot of memories. I don't know how many people have actually seen the film here, but the eccentric comment that I made as I described my grandmother, I still vividly recall that after we finished that take, she turned to me and she was quite peeved that was the word that I used to describe her, especially then after Erin described her grandmother as being glamorous. I really never lived that down. But you know, I think anyone who sees the film or who knew my grandmother, you know, I stand by that, and I think most people would agree. I also just really, I mean, of course, I was struck by how much I miss my grandmother. You know, she passed away 10 years ago now, and you know, it's always a pleasure to sort of see her on screen again, because she comes so much to life. Really like having her in the room. I also just miss the Nisei generation. You know, there's a lot of people in that film who are no longer with us, and you know, the mannerisms, the presence that's so unique to people from that community. I'm actually really so delighted and honored that Mary is with us today to sort of bring share some of that spirit with us. And I guess the other thing that I'll say about, you know, kind of reflecting on that film is that I was struck by how it kind of puts this current moment into a certain kind of perspective. You know, in the film, my grandmother talks about her childhood, which, you know, of course, was not free from adversity. You know, she lived in a world that was prescribed by racism, and there were family issues as well. But she did have some semblance of, you know, a happy childhood. And she had expectations and hopes for the future, you know, many of which were dashed by the war. And so, you know, I just can't help but think of the collective experience that we're all going through now with the global pandemic, and, you know, this sense of having your life suddenly upended, you know, having your expectations and assumptions of how your life was going to play out, the opportunities that you thought you were going to have. You know, I'm looking ahead now and definitely personally struggling to kind of come to terms with the way in which I see the world unfolding. So I feel like I'm starting to have just a tiny inkling of, you know, what my grandmother and so many others experienced during the war. And yet, you know, as shocking and disorienting as this time has been, it's still just you know, it pales in comparison to their experience. And I just really was kind of struck by that in revisiting the film.
I'll go next. I think for me, it was fun to see how grown up we have all become. you know, that last scene where we're all singing karaoke and all the cousins were there together, and we're all adults now, and a lot of us with our own children. So I think what was very poignant was how we see our elders within each other, ourselves, right? So I'm very fortunate to be the eldest of 13 grandchildren. I will not speak. I think each one of us have our own very precious memories that we've had with our grandmother. She's she has continued to be so consistent in her joy. So who she was 18 years ago is exactly the same, if not more so, the way she is today. She's just as goofy, if not more. She is just as musically inclined. Music is a consistent factor with all of us and the family, and she doesn't take things so seriously. That's what I really enjoy about. I don't get to see my grandmother very often. When I do, there's always a consistent lightness about her. And something that I remember very fondly from being introduced to camp at a very early age with her and my late grandpa Shai, there was very little resentment. And I know that that was not the same sentiment for many families in the Nisei community. My grandfather fell in love in camp. My grandmother Mary fell in love in camp. And I know that for them, had they not met during that time, um, they wouldn't have the big family that they do now. So I know I kind of went in kind of a circle there, but what has remained consistent is that sense of joy and optimism and consistent commitment to music and to fun. I mean, the goofiness, the joking all the time, that makes it very easy to be around grandma, and especially when she sings. And of course, she still sings today. So.
So I guess I'll kind of jump in at this point. One of the things that really struck me was how long ago 2012 was. I think that the documentary did this amazing job of just kind of capturing my grandmother and the other women in this slice of life, in this moment in time. And to see it in 2020 and look back at it, there's so much that's the same. You know, she was in this house, and I actually lived in the same house, and a lot of it's the same 18 years later. But I'm really just struck by how much my grandmother was able to accomplish that I didn't even necessarily appreciate as a child. And this documentary was able to capture it and give me a new light years later. My grandma passed away 2 years ago while I was still working at the museum. And obviously it was difficult for me to process because she was my grandma. But I was amazed at how many volunteers and staff just came to me and told me these stories that I had never heard before. And it was this amazing connection to just kind of be able to learn more about my family and my past that was shown to me by the people, my colleagues, and these volunteers and people at the museum. So I'm definitely appreciative of that. And then the other thing that I'm realizing is, my grandma's means of expression were these words, and capturing stories has become such an important thing to me. It was something that was passed on to my mom, and she really emphasized it with me and my brother. So I think that this capturing of stories and being able to express them so articulately is something that I think is really beautiful. So.
Thank you so much to all of you for sharing that. Yeah, I think that we're really grateful. I can speak as somewhat of another viewer, really grateful that you all kind of opened up your families and shared that with us, because I know that they are these wonderful figures in our community, but also your grandmothers. So I think that it was really exciting to explore that. But with that, I guess kind of what do you all see as your grandmother's legacies, and like how has that impacted you personally, whether that's in your practice or your life, or your families? How has that radiated out? I think we've talked a little bit previously to this about in our conversations leading up to this program about kind of the next generations and passing that through. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Does anyone want to take that first, or should I start calling on folks? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there are just countless ways in which, you know, my grandmother impacted me and the whole family. You know, she was the real matriarch, and she was, you know, a single mother of 4 children. And then I was the only grandchild on that side. So and, you know, I'm also living in her home. You know, she had a really outsized impact on all of us, and certainly was a huge part of my life growing up. I guess to just sort of take a couple of, you know, things that feel really pertinent in terms of the impact of her legacy. I think that there's something, I mean, definitely we should talk about creativity, which I think actually that's almost like this idea of creativity and resourcefulness is almost like the unspoken subtext of that film that John made. You know, it's this kind of idea that like scarcity breeds creativity, you know, creating something from nothing. You know, I feel like that film is kind of pointing to, you know, the connection between the adversity of internment, you know, and the spirit of ingenuity and the sort of willful reinvention that so many people manifested in response to that experience. You know, I mean, Manzanar was like, it was built out of, you know, this barest skeleton of, you know, of a place, and it was transformed into a thriving community, you know, such that it became a poster child for the war. And that was because of the resourcefulness of the people who were living there, and their, you know, their insistence on, you know, turning it into a home and a community space. So, you know, I think that definitely had an impact on my grandmother. I think also poverty had an impact on my grandmother, and that was another legacy of the war on our family. And so, you know, even beyond, of course, you know, the film talks about her weaving, and she was also a ceramics artist, but even beyond her, you know, her actual artwork, she was an intensely creative individual who, you know, loved to tout her own resourcefulness. You know, she loved to problem solve. She loved to figure out how to make things out of scraps, you know, how to fix things with packing tape, you know, all of those things. And so she really took the idea of deficit and, you know, turned that into something positive. And, you know, she became, again, the matriarch of of a whole family of creative individuals, all of her children, you know, and, you know, I would say even in my own life, in my own way, we definitely kind of you know, tend towards the liberal arts side. My uncle's a performance artist. You know, everyone is basically an artist in some shape or form. So I definitely think that creativity is one of her big legacies. And then, if I may, not to kind of ramble on, but I just want to say that for me personally, there was a little bit of vindication that I felt as I watched the film, because I guess I've made certain choices in my life that have gone against the grain of, you know, cultural, family, societal expectations, you know, for how one might choose to live and operate, and, you know, the ways that I've maybe prioritized certain values over others. So I've struggled with the weight of all of those expectations in my own life. And ironically, a lot of those expectations came from my grandmother. You know, she was really horrified when I dropped out of college, for example. But, you know, when I look back and reflect, and I definitely see it in that film, I feel like I'm only following in her footsteps. You know, basically, she's the one who taught me and who taught all of her children, because they've all internalized this in their own way, that basically that it's okay to take the road less traveled, and to chart your own course, and to follow that which you find meaningful, even if that's not the most popular or even the most practical choice. So I really feel like that's a huge part of her legacy in my life, and the courage that it takes to be that way is something that she set an example for, and I think the rest of us really aspire to. Sorry, that was so long.
No, that was really wonderful. And we had a few comments in there. Kathleen says, I remember seeing Hana as a small girl running around the JCCC Plaza with her grandma. And the Manzanar site shouted out the Momo weaving behind you. So yeah, what about you, Alyctra or Erin?
Okay, technology. Okay. Again, because grandma was a singer, is a singer. On a personal note, it's so interesting because there's a lot of very talented grandchildren in this family. I did not pursue anything that had to do with following in her footsteps in music, interesting enough, until now in my mid 40s. But with that said, because I feel like because I had the opportunity to grow up with both an Issei grandmother and a Nisei grandmother, I have, and they're both still alive, I have a very interesting dynamic where I can accept and allow and appreciate who each of them are. With my grandmother Mary, because she's Nisei, I feel like there was a different kind of freedom that because she was so ingrained in music from childhood, because her mother was a music teacher, and what it felt like, whatever we chose as grandchildren, whatever fulfilled our hearts was okay. I know so many of my friends have the experience of being so, you have to do this, typical Asian, what is it, lawyer, doctor, I don't know, how is it today, if it's still the same, but back then it was like they all had to be lawyers and doctors. But for grandma in the Nomura family, it was just so welcome to be singing and doing theater and acting and pursuing all of these amazing visual and performing arts. The cousins were constantly, all of us were constantly surrounded by singing. I know one of the memories that is pretty big for our family is that the harmonizing. We would have all the Nomuras over for Christmas or for a holiday, and you'd hear almost the whole family in the kitchen doing this beautiful harmony. And then later in the evening, they'd be doing some other harmony. Someone would bust out a guitar. And it was always like that. And I think looking, the polarity of the two kinds of the culture, we didn't have that kind of musicality in on my other side of the family. Not that it was a bad thing, but I'm so grateful that I was exposed to that, because today, now, kind of like she was saying, personally, I now find the confidence in pursuing something more musical now with my husband, because I married a professional singer. And in terms of legacy, there's so many things that I want to share, and I apologize, I'm a little bit frazzled. In terms of legacy, we are very fortunate to have a grandmother, this beautiful matriarch of this family, who's not only a classy, beautiful individual, but who has the kind of heart that allows everyone to be exactly who they want to be without feeling that kind of familial pressure. And because we were exposed to so much music so consistently, it's only natural that so many of the grandchildren have followed in her footsteps and become professionals in the visual and performing arts. So I feel very fortunate that we have, I can say my grandmother had a record. She recorded something. I mean, it's really an amazing thing to have in a family like that. So I hope that answered that question. Musicality and the legacy of being so committed, even to this day, to be able to sing. I love the fact that she's such a ham. Grandma admits that. I love the fact that she's okay admitting that she loves to sing. So at 95. So pretty awesome.
Yeah, and we're so lucky that she's going to be joining us in a few minutes. So if you just joined us on the live stream, that's coming up. And also please leave your questions for any of the folks on screen here or Mary in the chat on YouTube. But Alyctra, did you want to share anything?
Sure. So I think the concept of legacy is just such an interesting, thought as we're looking at this film that was so intergenerational. It obviously showcased the relationships that the three of us had with our grandmothers. But I think that all of us can attest that our grandmother's reach has really reached beyond that. As I'm listening to Hana and Erin talk about their grandmothers, the thing that I'm kind of hearing that really echoes my own grandmother is this self-confidence and determination. This strength and ability to believe that what they're doing or creating or writing or telling is important. And I think that that's just kind of something that's been really important to me, and it drives me every day, thinking about the stories that I think are important or the narratives that I think are important. And I think my grandma is a really good example of just kind of being able to give voice to that. I know that for a lot of people, she was one of the early pioneers of telling the JA story. And without that, a lot of the work that the museum does that I do now wouldn't be possible. It is kind of funny, though, as we talk about legacy that kind of extends outside of our immediate family. To me, my grandma was always Grammy. Like, that's what I called her. And so, she wrote and she did these plays and was so kind of renowned within the genre. But to me, she was just Grammy. She was the woman that would pick me up after school and make me avocado toast, or, we'd go swimming together and things like that. So it's been really interesting to just kind of think about this woman who is so impactful to me as an individual, taking care of me and kind of forming the type of person I am, and looking at her reach and the stories that she told, and kind of empowering other people to feel confident in collecting those stories and expressing them in whatever mediums that they felt. So I think that, her legacy, I definitely feel it kind of independently and personally, but it's been really incredible to see her reach in other facets of the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's something that I definitely give major props to the media arts department that at JANM that made this, that it was just such a beautiful weaving of all of their lives and their legacies and their families, because it's clear from what all of you are saying that family was so important to each of them, and that they had so much of an impact on all of you. So I think with that, want to continue the conversation and again encourage folks to leave questions in the chat that we can ask to Hana and Alyctra and Erin. But at this point, want to also bring in Mary herself. She needs little introduction, I think, but known as the Songbird of Manzanar, which was a nickname she gained from performances at the Manzanar concentration camp. She never had a professional singing career, but as mentioned, has records, was part of creating this exhibition that the Manzanar site mentioned at the Eastern California Museum in Independence with herself and her husband Shai. And she's about to celebrate her 95th birthday, right? So with that, Mary, I would love to invite you to join us on screen and turn your video on if you're able to do so. And in the meantime, also just reminding you that you can leave questions in the YouTube chat. You'll find that. So, hi, Mary.
Oh,
Thank you so much for joining us today.
I feel very honored, and I thank you so very, very much.
Well, definitely is our honor. And I know you've been listening to this conversation, But I wanted to ask you, did you get a chance to watch the film, and what is it like to reflect back on this 18 years later, as we were talking about?
Well, I hadn't had a chance to turn that VCR on all these years, and the other day when my granddaughter was here, she showed it on her little tablet. I don't even know the correct word for these tech talk anymore, but anyway, I do my best, and I turned it on. I said, "Wow, that was pretty interesting," because I had not seen it for 18 years since we filmed it in 2002, and I really enjoyed it, and I'm really very fortunate that I'm still able to see it. I'm sorry that Momo's not here and Makako's not here, but her grandchildren are carrying on their spirits, and I'm being very fortunate that my kids are egging me on and hoping that I don't fall flat on my face with my corny attitude. But I'm just really honored to be here and be able to speak to everyone, whoever wants to speak to with me.
Yeah, well, we're going to share some questions with the chat. Hopefully, some folks will put those in the YouTube chat. But I would love if you can talk a little bit more about this nickname, the Songbird of Manzanar, and kind of your time singing in camp and how that experience has continued to impact your relationship now with the music and the arts. We've heard that it's still very important to you.
I really don't know who gave me that sobriquet, I would say, but it might have been Mr. Louis Frizzell, who was the music teacher in Manzanar. It may have been at a program I sang, and that's the only way they introduced me because I used to sing in camp. But I honor that the title they gave me, and I just wear it proudly. And I used to be embarrassed by the introductions. Here comes the Songbird of Manzanar. Oh, for heaven's sakes! Now I'm more like the old crow of Manzanar, my age. But just very fortunate that maybe that's because they like me. I don't know. I'm glad that they still call me that. Uh, and gosh, I'm so poor at speaking. I can't speak like the young ladies that were preceded me, but like I say, I'm really, really proud that I was able to sing all those years as a 16-year-old in camp. I really started singing when I was 5 years old with my mother's recitals that she used to have, and because I was just a born ham, and to this day I can't do my yard work or my housework without singing or humming, and it's usually all those old songs in the 30s and the 20s and the 40s, and but just just a ham and music, just enjoy it, and I hope I'm fortunate enough to last a few more years and keep on sucking.
So, Grandma, I have a question for you.
Uh-huh.
If you could bless the family with your words of wisdom,
Ha!
what would it be? What would you tell us, Grandma?
Oh, always have that in your heart that music and the arts are so important for all mankind, and for our family to embrace that wholeheartedly. It's really a very proud moment for me to even think about that, because I know all my children somehow or other they do they listen to music, no matter if it's swing or jazz or even rap, and but when I was a little girl, I used to enjoy listening to the classical music, and I still enjoy listening to opera. I can't sing it, but I used to always, I could still pick out tunes from operas that I know where it comes from, but popular music is something that I've always liked, and I want my children to keep on having that desire for music in any form. It just, it's their life. I mean, to have music in the house and in their life, and I hope they will continue that thought with their children and grandchildren. That's what I hope for.
Thank you.
We actually got a question related to that. if there's any contemporary music that you're listening to right now that you like.
Contemporary music goes over my head. I hear my children, I mean, they are in their 60s and 70s, and they're singing these songs that, how in the world do you remember those words? But look, if I could remember words that I sang from the 20s and 30s, but what they're hearing now, they're telling stories, hey, babe, this and this and that, but I don't know what they're singing, but the kids can all sing it because I guess it's in them that they can hear music and they can repeat it and it's music to them. To me, I said, "Oh my gosh, what's that?" But to them, it's their music, and I really admire that they can do this and just naturally. It's amazing.
Yeah, I guess then stepping back, is there the Manzanar site is asking if you remember the Symphony Under the Stars music played in camp, or if
Oh,
there are any specific songs or artists you recall or favorites you had.
well, I don't know how Mr. Ushijima, who was the what do you call those disc jockey in those days, in our days now, but he had all the electrical equipment and the records. I don't think they had tapes in those days, but and we would have symphonies under the stars, and we bring out our blankets and sit under the trees and listen to the music that he brought into camp, and I'm just so thankful that we were able to hear the kind of music that we were able to keep on hearing. That we had a radio. I don't know how my brother was able to sneak into the camp because we were only supposed to have taken our clothing into camp, but he had a record player and a radio. And so we were always able to hear swing music and ballads of that era. So whenever there was a program on and they would ask me to sing, I was able to sing the popular songs of that era. And I was very fortunate that even Mr. Louis Frizzell, on his day off from teaching in camp, he'd go into Los Angeles, pick up sheet music for me, and he would bring it back and play it for me and teach me the songs. And with those songs, I was able to sing my head off in camp. And I was very fortunate that he was so very supportive. Uh, he's just a big supportive man, and I really owe him a lot. And he went on to become a actor in Broadway, and he did movie parts and on TV, and we lost him too early. He passed away, and I never got to get back to him except for a couple of times we got together and had a little jam session.
Yeah, we had one more question as well about the Kageyama trio and your experiences performing at military bases before the war. I don't think that was in the film as much. So could you talk a little bit about that?
Oh yes, I was taking singing lessons from about 12 years old, and the teacher liked to get people together to sing harmony and rhythm, and and just he was just very supportive. And so he got my brother, who was about 9 years older than I, and my sister, who was just 2 years older than I, and we made a trio, and he taught us the parts, and we formed the Kageyama trio. In 1941, no, 1940, we sang at, no, in 41, we sang at the Nisei Week talent show, and we sang as a trio, and then it was well accepted because there was no such thing as brothers and sisters singing together and harmonizing and singing swing songs in the air. So that was really quite just exciting for us to be able to do that. And now well, my brother's now gone, but my sister is 97 years old. She'll be 98 next year, and she's still chugging along like I am. And we're very, very fortunate that we always had this music in our house, and stemming from my mother all the way up to my brother, who is into music, any kind of music. I remember the long play, I guess they call it long play now, but a record, one of those big 14-inch or whatever it is record. My mother used to play William Tell's Overture on one of those Victrolas where you wind it up it used to frighten me because it was so deep and ominous sound music. But I really remember my mother teaching us, I mean, instilling in us the love of any kind of music, whether it be opera or symphonies or just singing, and even singing old Japanese opera type songs that she taught her students. And so, just thanks to my mother, we had that in our family. Well, I'm going all crazy, talking about a long time ago and today and whatever. I mean, I'm imagining it. I'm sorry, but what do you expect from old ladies anyway?
No need to apologize at all. We're loving these stories. Hana or Electra, did you have any questions that you wanted? Not to put you on the spot. You're
I just texted you one. I just wanted to know if, Mary, if you credit your longevity to having such a musical life, it feels like that's really sort of like a deep source of energy for you. And it sounds like for your whole family, and that you are also um, vivacious at 95 and 97.
Well, I've always been a ham, and I've always had a positive attitude. I mean, gloom and doom can be someone else's forte, but I always enjoyed life. I enjoy eating, so I enjoy cooking. And living alone, I still cook every day just for myself to eat, and I'm always experimenting different kinds of recipes and stuff because I'm just a love to eat, and so I do. And I I don't like to clean the house, but I have to once in a while. Cooking and music has always been my life. You know, I hope to always have that to my day that I go to my happy hunting ground.
A woman after my own heart.
I remember Momo always having that kind of a positive attitude too, and she was really a vivacious lady, and I really admired the way she took life in her hands and just shared it with people. That was really, I remember her for that.
I was gonna ask kind of about if we Electra found this photograph of all of you at JANM together. Um, and it's really wonderful to hear you talking about Momo's legacy and Wakako's and like your relationship, all of you being so powerful. I was wondering if you had any other stories or anything you'd like to share about the other woman in this film and whether they impacted you in any way.
Well, Wakako is a writer, and that's way above what I can do. And I love reading. I love poetry. I'll sit there and I'll just enjoy it. But in no way can I do anything like that. But I just enjoy literature, and and I just had my another pair of glasses made because I couldn't read with these that I have on. So I had new reading glasses made just so I could keep on reading my newspaper and magazines and books. And that's something I've always admired of people who could write. And I know that a few of my children are writers and my grandchildren. And so it stems from the arts. And I know Wakako was her writing was gorgeous, and she had that made into a play, and I saw it on TV when she made that and the soul shell dance, and I really admired her ability to tell stories where we could understand and feel everything she had tried to express, and she expressed, oh, here we are, we're looking nice and vivacious, Momo and Wakako and Old Gray Mary. I remember that. Very nice.
Electra, do you remember when this was from?
You know, I was looking through my old photos in preparation for this, and it looks like it's in R20 Central Hall. So I assume that there was some sort of program done in collaboration with the release of this film, since all of you guys are together. I vaguely remember, going as a little girl to the museum and getting to see everyone. So.
Yeah, thank you for sharing this picture. I thought it was wonderful to see them all together like this. Yeah.
I have another question for Mary. No, I can interject.
Please do.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, you know, I'm wondering about your experience to, your relationship to being in camp and how that's sort of changed over the years. It's sounding like what Alora was saying, and kind of, what you're talking about is that um, you know, you have a tendency to look on the bright side, which is incredible. And it also seems like there were some really wonderful things. And I know in the film, your late husband, you were talking about sort of his, that he had a kind of a positive relationship to, aspects of that time. And I'm just curious, I think my grandmother also, she, for many, many years, had a tendency to sort of focus on, the sort of the humorous, the kind of lighthearted side of that time. She always, of course, acknowledged, the injustice of it and the hardships. But for a long time, she really kind of, it was part of her life, and she remembered the everyday experiences. Whether it was, when um, that one of the neighbors in the barracks sleep talked in the middle of the night and woke up everyone up saying, "What? No ping pong balls?" Or when she, split half of a cherry pie with one of her friends and like ate the entire half in one sitting. Um, you know, those were the kinds of, some of the stories that she would share. But I do remember that sort of as she got older, I felt like her relationship did change, and she started to reflect more on some of the, you know, essentially the horror of that time, and the way, and focus maybe more on the injustice of it. And I'm just curious sort of how you see that time of your life at this point.
I didn't mature very much when I was in camp. I went in there as a happy-go-lucky 16-year-old, and I figured, well, we're going to be here for how long? Just have to make the best of it. I did complain that my senior year was not is being non-existent, and all those fun things that would have happened if I was not in camp. But how would it have been if I was not in camp during that hard time in wartime? And how would the reception be for the Japanese Americans, or the East Asian and East Asian alone? They would have been, I'm sure it would have been quite prejudicial. I mean, people not accepted us as we would have wanted to be, because we were Americans, American citizens. But they would look at us and say, uh, like it is right now, they would look at us funny, and I don't know if I could have survive that, because I was also happy go lucky. I went to camp not knowing what camp was. I went to camp thinking, hey, we're going to have fun. We're going to have games and not have any problems, and this is going to be great. I did not know camp was not camp. I thought camp was what we expected it to be as camp was not. It was being confined and not having anything to do with the outside world. And I had to I guess I kind of grew up that little while out with the first few months. I guess maybe it took me a year or so to get used to the idea that we were captive, we're in a barbed wire, and had to make the best of it. So I, being the way I am, I joined the girls' club and played baseball, and then whenever there was a program going on, they asked me to sing, and I would sing with all my heart and enjoyed it. But that's the only way I think a person could survive what we have to go through, by having the attitude, accept the attitude, accept the situation, and have that attitude. What can we do? I just have to make the best of it. And so my being in camp was just a different perspective than most people, because my husband and I had the same perspective. We said other people can have their gloom and doom talk and, oh, our freedom's gone, but let's make the best of it and do what we can do to stay alive and enjoy life by joining in the other part of staying sane in camp. My husband used to say, let the other people tell the stories, and I'll tell the stories that we felt. And so we both had a more of a positive attitude. So maybe that doesn't strike well with a lot of people, but that's the way it was with us.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing
I
that.
just want to interject right here. I'm sorry. One thing growing up and having the opportunity, this is really like touching a chord for me. Growing up, listening to their stories and experiencing the camp experience through my grandmother and Grandpa Shy's eyes really did set the tone for the rest of my life and the way that I view things that come up socially that should be better. And even though what happened during World War II was a complete injustice, and what is happening now is a complete injustice, what my grandmother just said hit the nail on the head so hard that when you create an attitude of gratitude and of love, their story was not one of war. That is never how I've ever experienced their relationship or my grandmother's experience in camp. It's always been a love story. Always. First and foremost, it's always been a love story. And I think I'm very grateful that I think by accident, I have really been able to relate to that period of time, especially when I tell other people who have no idea about the internment camps, like my husband. This was the first time he was really present to what happened. I was able to tell the story from the space of my grandparents' relationship, which was beautiful. And from there, I could tell him about Executive Order 906 and so on and so forth. But it was the context of how I was able to share that story that really shaped that experience for my husband and for my kids especially. So I'm in that sense, that is a beautiful piece of legacy that my grandmother and grandfather have so naturally given to me and to our family, that we're able to tell that story from a space of love and gratitude rather than of hatred or injustice. Does that make sense? So I'm so thankful for that, Grandma. Thank you so much for continuing to tell the story the way that you do. It just really presents to me to how beautiful we can share an experience of our life when we change our attitude and the context from which we are coming from. So thank you.
Beautiful. Yeah. I mean, I feel like that really does speak to. I mean, both of you are saying this idea of resourcefulness and creativity. Within the community, making the most out of what you have, even when what you have is very small, and finding ways to sort of be happy with that. I think that's definitely something that kind of, I have the sense that came out of all of the grandmothers featured in the film, and certainly from mine. It's kind of the, there is that sort of Issei stoicism, right? Too, like the gaman, shikatakanai. But I feel like this is what Mary, you were talking about, and Laura, this kind of taking that a next step, and sort of not just enduring it, but kind of improving on it. And yeah, I mean, tough ladies. I really have so much respect for all of them.
Thank you so much. And I think I can only reflect what the Manzanar site just said, which is thank you for sharing your grandmas with us. It's truly an honor. Yeah, just such a powerful stories and legacies. And thank you for sharing, everyone.
Thank you for providing an opportunity to talk about them and to, you know, to bring some of them back and to have Mary here. Really wonderful.
Are there any last thoughts, I guess, that any of you have on kind of like what you hope people take moving forward? I think we just talked about this remarkable legacy and this resilience, but yes, is there anything else that you want people to get from watching this film?
I think that one of the things that I really appreciated, and you know, thank you to John and Akita and the media arts crew for creating this so many years ago, is just it's a lot of self-reflection. You know, it allowed me to think more about myself back then and about myself now and about my grandma. And I think that that's something that can translate to everyone. You know, now I work at the museum, and I think that obviously that's so much because of the fact that the JA story was something that was taught to me from a very young age and shown to me as something important. And I'm really grateful for the opportunity to get to learn more about myself. But my work in membership allows for me to talk to members, and we have, you know, supporters across the country. And it doesn't matter if I'm calling someone in Hawaii or New York or something like that. It seems like there's so much commonality in all of that. And the fact that everyone can kind of reflect back and look at where they've come from and how that's influenced them. So I think that, you know, it's been really special, obviously, to be a part of it so many years ago, but getting to come back and circle back in 2020 and see how we've changed and how we've grown and the values that we kind of still hold, and thinking about how that is common to hopefully to people who can watch the film now.
I think it's just really beautiful that there's the legacy of stories of these women that we're able to pass on to our generations, the next generation, and so on and so forth. There's a plethora, so many different ways to experience the Japanese American experience, right? But when you look at it and you kind of dissect it and look at these three wonderful women, these beautiful creative women, hyper creative women, you begin to find yourself in their experience and see how their lives were not much different than ours. And what we take from their lives will only enrich future generations that much more. I have very deep respect for these women. It takes a lot of courage to be an artist, to be a creative, to be a visual storyteller in general, as it is. To be a woman and to be Asian American and to be recognized to be recognized at the level of talent that they actually exude is another. So I'm very thankful that Joy, that you have brought together everyone again. And I'm very thankful for these other beautiful women here representing their grandmother's legacies and carrying on their experiences in their words and in their weavings and in their tapestries and in my grandmother's songs for the rest of the world and for more generations to come. Thank you.
I think that is a beautiful place to end, but I have been getting text requests to ask if Mary would sing. Would you be open to sharing something with us? Not to put you on the spot, but
I don't have an accompanist, so I just have to sing a la carte.
Yay!
And it's a song that was written for me in camp by Mr. Lee Frizzell about the life of the young people who had no privacy. Everybody knew what everyone was doing and who you were dating and what you were doing and all those things. So it's just a short part of the song that I think I can sing it. It's called When I Can. And I lovingly called it the Manzanar song. I know a boy and I know a girl in Manzanar. They try to feel that it makes no difference where you are. It's as simple as this, they're in love, and one private kiss they dream of. But when he goes to see her, soon the folks all go to bed. But he feels he wants to remain. There's no place else to take her, to tell her that he loves her. And occasionally I've heard him complain. Our love affair of necessity must be a thing of public interest, not private property. For there's mom and pop and sis and bud to peer and jeer when I love you and you love me. No place to park and watch the moon go down. We can't take in a picture show or window shop the town. We must do our romancing with lots of people glancing. We don't care, just let them stare and let them frown. The mess hall can be dinner at the Ritz while you lay your corsage. Since gas is rationed, we must walk a bit, but we can pretend our Packard is stored in camouflage. So we'll go on and do the best we can. You're still my favorite glamour girl, and I'm your ardent fan. It's just as good to pretend it's not so important when you're true. It's I forgot the rest of the word. It's not to show it when I can. Sorry, I started too low. So that's all I remember.
Yay!
Oh, that was incredible. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your voice, your legacy, your music with us. We are truly an honor, and the comments are saying, I'm sure that Louie and Shai are smiling right now. Thank you. And to all the rest of you, your grandma's legacies and hopes are in good hands, is what they're saying. So, and your grandma too, Mary. So such a special moment, such a special evening. Thank you for sharing. And with that, I think that we'll let everyone go and hope that everyone stays safe. Please continue to follow along with JANM's work. This video will remain online here, so you can revisit, rewatch that beautiful performance. And we hope that you share this and can watch the film if you haven't already to see more about these amazing, wonderful women and everyone here. So with that, thank you so much. Have a great night. And thank you everyone for watching.
You.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.